Not interested.
Should we give any special attention or consideration to interacting with Jehovah's Witnesses or LDS persons who engage our content? Let me rewind. Should we give any special attention or consideration? It depends on what you mean by that. I mean, I kind of feel like no matter what a person's background is, as I've been learning in the last year or two, it comes down to, are they open to hearing what I have to say, you know? Now this is different from like how I would handle an interaction with somebody that's just like in the real world with me, you know? Because I'm not a content creator in the real world. In the real world, when I hang out with people, they're hanging out with me, Paeter, this guy they know, you know? Whereas online, it's not like an equal interaction. It's not an equal give and take relationship in the same way. Like, for example, what you guys are doing here is largely passively taking in what I am saying. I'm constantly saying, and then you say something now and then I'll react to that. But largely, this thing that we're doing is about what I'm saying, you know? Which sounds very egocentric when I say that out loud, but I'm a content creator, and so that's what I'm doing, and that's what you're here for, you know. How does that relate? Sorry, rabbit trail, guys. Oh yeah. So I'm trying more and more to not waste time saying things, whether that's in the YouTube comments, spilling out some information that they might be interested in or whatever the context is. If I sense that they're not actually open, if they are, just being confrontational or something, then first step is I'll try to usually get that off a public setting, because I feel like they're more likely to listen, and frankly I'm more likely to listen if we are not shouting at each other from digital podiums in a public square, which is essentially what most online interaction is with other people. Email is a little bit more akin to a one-on-one conversation, and I think then both people can listen and be more vulnerable and open and stuff in that kind of setting. So special attention, if that means like give them more time, that is totally up to if they're open or not, and that's for anybody. If someone's coming from an atheist, Christian, whatever kind of background, Jehovah's Witness or LDS, if they're open, that's what gets my wheels going, because I am naturally wired to teach. And so if someone's receptive and interested, then I'm interested in engaging with them. If they have clearly already made up their mind about something, then I'll listen to their point of view, and I might comment a little bit on where I'm coming from. But once I sense that kind of like they're settled where they're at, and they haven't said anything that's persuading me to change where I'm at, then I try to move on. That's why I put up on my wall the new phrase that's right next to the classic "things go different more often than they go wrong." You told me a while back that that's kind of echoed in your mind a few times from hearing it over the years from me. But in the last year, the one that I've put up on my wall right next to that says, "Keep your pearls and shake off the dust." Taken from Matthew 7:6 and 10:14. I've talked about this a few times in journal entries and stuff. But just the idea of, I'm not going to waste my time on people that are not receptive, But if your comment is like maybe special consideration, well, you did say consideration, special consideration, like should I interact with them differently because of their background? I think that potentially the answer to that is yes. But I don't want to assume what they're, I don't want to put all people from with an LDS background in a box, even though there are often some common traits. I don't want to put them in a box, so I'd rather just like try and figure out where they're at on a case-by-case basis. You know, Ravi Zacharias has a great kind of like a motto or like this thing that he comes back to, and I hear it from the other people that are on his staff and also doing ministry. And that is to always remember that you're answering a questioner, not just a question. Try to answer the questioner, not the question. And one of the guys on his staff, I was just watching a video of him giving a talk that led into a Q&A session, and he phrased it another way. He said, questions don't need answers. People need answers, and they ask questions to get them. You know, and I think essentially what they're just trying to get at is, remember that you're talking to a person, you're interacting with a person, try to figure out where they're at, what they really care about. And sometimes that'll be obvious and it'll be in the question they're asking. Sometimes, and this is hard to tell through text, you know, it's easier to tell when you're actually conversing with somebody. But sometimes they're asking a question and that's not really the thing that's bothering them, that's really kind of like motivating, that there's something else going on. Maybe they're angry at God or something like that, or maybe they're, you know, if they're coming from a legalistic background, maybe something that you're saying kind of gets under their skin a little bit because it calls into question what they believe, and they want to solidify in their minds, yes, I am right, and so I'm going to be confrontational with this person online and kind of put them in their place so that I can feel like, yes, I'm confirming, and a lot of this is on the subconscious level, I'm confirming that I'm right and they're wrong, and so I can have peace about the fact that that they're saying things that are very counter to what I believe or whatever, you know. So that was just a whole lot of lip flapping there, but yeah. Hey, Gabriel, aka Barbells and Joysticks. Oh, he asks, saw a little bit of Diablo 3. Are you interested in Warhammer Chaos Bane? I hope you guys don't mind that I'm not necessarily playing right now. I kind of view these decompression live streams as, you know, like, hey, video gaming can be the default background activity, but we can just chat too, and I'm totally cool with that. As long as there's stuff that we can all think of to talk about. Saw a little bit of Diablo 3. If you missed it earlier, Gabriel, I'm super tired. Had a great night, special night, sleeping with the boys. We shared a bed together. Lots of fun. Cute little legs are cute, but they move around all night, and so whenever we do that, I sleep horribly, and so I've been super tired all day. Hello, saw a little bit of Diablo 3. Are you interested in Warhammer Chaos Bane? I am. It just got on my radar like in this last weekend. I think it was one of the gaming podcasts I kind of keep track of highlighted it, and we're a little ways away still from a release. I think May is maybe when it's coming out. But man, especially since Path of Exile is taking so stinking long to figure out a release date and make it happen. I've been in a Diablo clone-y type of mood. Trying to find something that can scratch that itch for now till Path of Exile. And when Path of Exile comes out, it's probably gonna like just not be what I wanted. I'm working it up in my mind. It's not gonna satisfy, as nothing in this life can that isn't made to last forever. Nathan Norman says, I agree with Paeter. If a person is open to dialogue, I'm willing to have a conversation. Largely my interactions with LDS and the Jehovah's Witness folks turns into long circular conversations. Yeah, you know, that's been my experience too. I think the conversations I've had that were really, I think, kind of more fruitful and more interesting and that actually got to talk to being real were with LDS folks who were no longer Mormons. If you're curious on that subject, anybody interested, you know, I posted that episode of the Living Stones podcast, which is the name of the podcast I do for our church. And the first episode, I interview a guy named Chris Bridges, who's in my monthly Dungeons and Dragons group, really great guy, and he comes from a Mormon background and became a believer right around in high school, I want to say, and he's, in his late 20s, early 30s now, and has been involved in our church for a number of years. And anyway, really neat guy, and he just opened up in that podcast. We, interviewed and talked to him about what it was like to grow up in that home, and so that was one example of, really being real and deep. And then I've also got some friends that I reconnected with a couple years ago who were, long story short, this is kind of not quite accurate, but just to simplify it, I'll say they were Mormon. One of them kind of agnostic, or kind of, one of them was a Christian, converted to Mormonism when he married her, and she was a Mormon. I knew her better than him in high school. We were in choir together and stuff, and but there, he never, he said kind of like in his heart, never really converted to Mormonism, but she is no longer a believing Mormon, hasn't been for a few years now, and she kind of just shared that on Facebook a couple years ago, and then we connected, and and had some real great, very real conversations, so yeah, I think especially the doorstep conversations with those folks are going to be the hardest, because they are there with an agenda. They're not open, they're there to get you to be open, or hope that you'll be open, So we used to get regular visits, but now we live in a community that doesn't allow that. So we haven't had visits for the last 2 years, and part of me regrets that a little bit. I had a whole packet made up for Jehovah's Witnesses specifically, because they like to give you stuff, and so, but they don't like to receive stuff. I tried that with one, I was like, oh, okay, hey, well, since you're giving me some stuff, can I give this to you? And he's like, no, I'm okay. He was really, I think, felt kind of threatened by that. Anyway, I'm blabbing, sorry. Yeah, Nathan, I think wisely says, I try not to engage too long in those types of interactions. Yeah, if it's getting circular, I think I worry that if he brings up something from his belief, I won't have a reasoned response. That is okay. That is okay. And this is something I need to say out loud and hear and remember for myself too. I think that any time you want, if you're not sure what the response is, you can say, and this is an honest response. I don't think this is deflection. You can say, I've got some ideas of how I might like to, respond to that, or some thoughts on that, but I want to give that topic the weight and consideration that it really deserves, and this format just doesn't allow me to do that. But I would love to value that topic by connecting with you in email if you'd like, and then I think I can give it the honor and consideration that question or that topic deserves. I think you honor them, and you honor the topic at hand. These are weighty things. I was just at a church meeting, I want to say 6 months ago, for children's ministry, and there was a guy that at the end, when they asked if we had any questions, got up and he just went on a tear talking about how the church should be spending their money, and they're spending it in all the wrong ways, and da-da-da-da. And, like, you could feel the tension in the room. Just like, and just hearing him talk, you're like, this guy does not understand what the heart of this church is, and what the mission of this church is, and the gal leading the children's ministry was so gracious in how she handled that. This was in a live setting. We were in the same room together, and she said, you bring up some really important issues, and I want to honor your questions and your comments by giving them the time and the weight that they deserve. So I'd love to talk to you afterward, and maybe schedule some time where you and I can sit down and talk about those things, because you bring up some really important issues that I wouldn't do justice to if I tried to respond to them right now, And so it honors the questioner, and and it doesn't require you to have this great answer right off the bat, and it invites ongoing dialogue, and then you can actually find out if they're open or not. Because if they're open, then they'll get in touch with you, or they'll be receptive if you get in touch with them. And if they're not open, then you can say, okay, then even if I would have had the most brilliant answer in the world, they weren't open, it would have just bounced right off of them, So I think that's a really good way to go. Yeah, and I think Nathan says as well, maybe a good response is simply, tell me more, and then as a Christian, here's what I believe, Yeah, I mean, you don't have to necessarily provide like a defense in the moment for every point. You can just use that opportunity to distinguish between viewpoints, because I think in the case of like LDS folks, they aren't aware of some really significant differences between Christianity and Mormonism. That's something that Chris Bridges brought up in the episode 1 of the Living Stones podcast, is, like in his investigative journey, one of the first things he said to himself in his journey is he said, okay, well, let's just look at the Bible at face value and see what the Bible seems to be saying at face value, and then compare that to Mormonism. And he'd never really entered into that before, So I think even just without saying, like, this is why what I believe is more sensible than what you believe, just pointing out the differences, I think can really help them have some things to think about as they leave that conversation. And maybe they'll be more likely to think about it if you present it as Nathan says, well, okay, so I think I understand what your position is. As a Christian, here's what I believe, or they would consider themselves Christians, so you would maybe just say, what I've come to believe as I look at the Bible is blah, 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 blah. You don't have to get into all the whys, but just, and then he at least understands what the differences are, Yeah, great point, Nathan. All right. Well, thanks for that encouraging word. Phenomenal is too strong of a word, but thank you. That's, it's if you were talking about anything that I said, I think it was phenomenal how that ministry leader handled that. So, my gosh, Holly and I were sitting there, and I was just like, I was like sitting, and I tried not to make it too obvious, but like I just like my head just started going down, and I just kind of like I was trying to not make it too obvious that I was looking for my happy place. So, I consciously, didn't rock or like, wiggle my foot, as it was on my lap, But oh my gosh, that was such a wonderful model for me. Anyway.